All right, welcome to Tilt Dialogues, our podcast, episode 5. Today we're talking about organizational values, especially talking about love, compassion. What does ethical hacking look like? What motivates a business? How do we align the processes and the incentive structures of a business with these core values? Today we have 4 guests. We'll see how that goes. I think it's going to be interesting. So we've got Julia Mossbridge. She's the acting CEO of Lightroot Quantum, quantum computing company. Also, author, researcher, um, co-founder of Tilt. We also have Amber Williams. Amber is our lead designer at Tilt, but she's also very interested in making sure that our products are representing the people who need to be represented the most. We have Marten Mickos from HackerOne. Welcome, Martin. And we have Mark Achler, Kellogg professor and Kellogg School of Business at Northwestern University, and Math Venture Partners. So welcome, everyone. Um, I think I'm just going to start with a very simple question. What does love look like in an organization, and how would you express it?
Oh yeah, that's simple, Eric.
Yeah.
Easiest question.
Uh, I think we all kind of have to give our shot at that because we're all going to have different answers, right? I'm going to start then and just say my shot at that is to say it looks like from the outside different from it looks in the inside. So the inside of the people of the organization, it feels like, because you're not looking with your eyes, so it feels like peace, profound peace, because each person has the experience of being loved for exactly who they are. You know, even if they're being told that they're gonna have to leave the organization or whatever, um, they're they're having peace around what's going on. And then from the outside, it looks like one heck of a productive and functional organization because love, conditional love isn't being used or withdrawn to try to shape behavior. Oh, and I'm going to tag Mark for your take on this.
Oh, I loved your answer. Um, where I was going with this is adjacent to love is humility, is selflessness, is low ego, high performance. And there's a saying that we have, which is bring your whole self to something that's larger than yourself. And so it's not only unconditional love for the people that you work with, for the people that your customers, for the people that you support, but it's in service to something that's larger than just you and yourself. All right, Amber, I'll tag you next.
I think I'm gonna kind of echo what you said. I kind of have a belief that you're supposed to bring everything with you and like the spaces that you show up. So that was kind of along the lines with that. And I think unconditional love within an organization looks like empathy and all the nuances of that. I think that's the most a person like working within an organization or being new or like kind of learning themselves could ask for within an organization. So that's pretty, yeah, that's kind of where I see it. So I'm gonna tag Martin.
Great responses. I was thinking of it from the perspective of trust and confidence. That
Yeah.
we need to have confidence that everybody is there with good intent. Like we must believe in the goodness of people coming into it, and somehow that path opens up everything when you start from the assumption that everybody here is actually trying to do their best. Everybody is here with their best sides. Everybody is here in full. It's not always true, but I think you have to start from that confidence, because if you don't believe in it, then it certainly won't be true. So you must invest your own confidence in the environment around you, and then in most cases it happens. Doesn't always happen, but in most cases it happens. So I think it's something you gain from. Everybody wins.
Are
And
there?
I'm
Oh, go
sorry,
ahead,
if I could just drill down on that just 1 second.
please.
Part of building, I couldn't agree more. And part of building trust, you also have to allow for vulnerability, right? Like, there's nothing more powerful than the benefit of the doubt and building this trust. And you have sometimes you have to earn trust, and by earning trust, you also have to allow yourself to be vulnerable. And so unconditional love also allows for vulnerability to happen. So sorry, Eric, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Is it okay if I chime in? I think I have to address something that Martin said, which is you and I are similar, Mark. We're like, wait, I've got to say this thing. I think it is true that everyone's always doing the best they can. In other words, by definition, the brain is wired to do the best it can, and it may not be good enough for the organization or what you need in that moment. But literally, like the person who doesn't show up to work and, is being horrible to the other people they work with and stuff, that's the best they can, given what's going on for them right now. Like there's no exception to that. So I think that's a key. There's a key piece here, which is to acknowledge that what everyone is doing is the best they can, even if you don't like what they're doing.
Yeah, I know you say it, Julia, and I sort of scientifically agree with you. Say, okay, Julia is so correct now, but then I still can't reconcile it with my reality when I know that I have moments when I don't think I myself am doing my best. I'm like, okay, maybe this is the best I can get myself to do, but it's not the best I should be able to get myself to do.
The should. See,
Yeah,
unconditional.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, it's the should. It's like
I know.
that's so much suffering. It's the should, right?
Yeah, there
It
is so much
should.
suffering, but
Yeah,
then
in the should.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm early on this journey, and then when you say suffering, I'm like, yeah, but a lot of the good stuff I've seen in this world that I've done or others came through suffering, and nothing good came without suffering. Maybe
Oh,
I'm
well,
wrong here.
let's define the difference between suffering and pain, right?
Oh,
Pa-
okay.
Pain is a signal that something
Yeah,
needs to shift, right? It's a
yeah.
really helpful signal. Something is going wrong, it needs to shift. Suffering, in my view, is the assessment of pain saying that shouldn't be happening. That thing should not be happening. And that's just added like layers of stuff because it is happening. Right? It's like so useless. You
Yeah.
can just experience the pain and learn from that. You don't need to be like, also, it shouldn't be happening.
Okay. Yeah.
but-
I'm learning.
That makes
I'm
sense?
learning. That's why I'm saying these things so that you will tell me that I'm using the wrong word or looking at the wrong way.
I also think because I feel like I had to deal with that thought a lot through my life that my best came out of like moments where things were like the worst. But it wasn't that, it was just that it was a motivating factor to like do more because I think my like heart and soul brain are like, you are suffering, so we need to stop. And so it was just like a motivation to like be in a different place. And so yeah.
So
So
is
you're
so
both saying that suffering is not needed, although it exists.
well, so let me give you a counterpoint to that. So the question is, as leaders, how do we create an environment that allows the most of human potential, that gets the most out of as an individual and as a team together? And I'll throw in one Steve Jobs story. I used to work at Apple in the very early days, in the very beginning. And, as a CEO, when I asked one of my employees to do extra work, to work hard, nights and weekends, and if they worked really hard and they gave me an arbitrary scale of a 0 to 10, they gave me a 9. As a CEO, I would say, thank you. Like, thanks for that extra work. I really appreciate it. I saw Steve Jobs time and time again get into people's faces you know, if we're comfortable with this much space, he'd like go right into people's faces, scream at the top of his lungs, spit coming out of his mouth, going, I can't believe you gave me this pile of shit. Like there's this load of crap. And what I saw is on that arbitrary scale of 0 to 10, I saw people do an 11, like do work they didn't even know that they were capable of doing. But I saw people have mental breakdowns. I saw people have addiction. I saw people get divorced. You know, the pressure. And so this question of unconditional love is very closely tied to how do we get the most potential from all of us individually and together. And I know for me as a CEO, I don't have it in me. I place the
You do not need to
value.
do that. You do not need to do that. That's like making the argument that spanking a child works. They stop doing the behavior, and it does. But there's follow-on impacts that are not good for the child or the family, as you just pointed out, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
To me, the human being was more important than the end result. To Steve Jobs, the end result was an early Steve Jobs. I
He
can't
was
speak.
He
Right.
was, but he was only looking at the end result in a short period of time. You look longer out, and now you have a whole populace of people who can't function because they've been traumatized by their leader. So, yeah.
I feel like what you saw at Apple was like tied into capitalism and this idea that we need to be productive to be valuable. And like somebody who isn't like on that chain is not going to allow somebody to disrespect them that way to stay at a job. I'm not going to do 11 because I don't like you and you don't love me. And so like I feel like once we can separate the capitalistic part, then we can get into like I'm developing you with unconditional love. And yeah.
What would be an example of the Venn diagram of capitalism and unconditional love? Like what company or person is sort of doing both in an amazing way so that we could learn from and copy them?
Well, there's Tilt, it's 2 for 11 times.
Yeah. But something outside of this group, some
I,
unbiased evidence from the world. Like what would
Yeah.
it be?
I have an example.
Yeah.
So there's a company called Jellyvision. Great company. Amanda Lannert's the CEO. She's one of the best CEOs I know. And for example, they have a policy of on the first day of your job, as you're walking out at the end of the day, everybody in the entire office stands up and claps and gives you a big applause, which I just love. And when it's time to go, they have this policy of, look, just they call it schmutz on your teeth. If they're there's that little piece of lettuce that's sticking on your teeth that nobody wants to say anything. They say to employees, we want you to be honest with us. If it's not working out, let us know. We'll give you all the time in the world to find another job, and we're going to give you an open invitation to come back if you leave and you want to come back. And they have an amazing culture at Jellyvision, just amazing.
Where are they
Thank you.
based, Mark?
Chicago.
All right, Amber.
There we go.
Yeah, you should you should have Amanda on this podcast. She the company culture that they created is joyful and incredibly loving and trusting. Like they trust their employees. They trust their employees with information. They trust in financials. They trust their employees to make the best decisions for themselves, for their customers, for their company. And they really believe in openness and transparency.
What I'm hearing, Mark, is that it's not a false front.
No.
So it's not like that elsewhere they're like, okay, so our attitude is going to be one of trust, but then elsewhere behind closed doors, no, that it's an authentic, integrated approach to joy and unconditional love and capitalism at work. That's fantastic. Great example.
Yeah.
So excited.
when you talk about these models where it's kind of like if you build it, they will come. Like if you build this structure, you're going to have happier employees and stuff like that. But I'm just curious, especially because Julia's, take on how could you possibly be doing better than you did? Like it's just, materially impossible. But how much does it need to come from the free will of an employee deciding to show up, and how much does it need to come from the structure itself?
I don't know. The employee is part of the structure. I mean, there's no distinction, right? In good companies, there's no distinction. It's just the same transition that we have to make in science, where we start to recognize that the experimenter is part of the system being observed. It's this distinction that we make between like employee and then like some existing structure that exists without employees, which is bullshit because of course the entire thing is a bunch of people who are employees, right? That
But don't you have,
distinction,
Julia, don't you have
yeah,
free, sorry, I'm interrupting you, but
that's
isn't
fine.
free will something that we may have and we act on or we don't? Like, isn't that something you would like to maybe maximize?
Why? The story of free will and the number of machinations that science has gone through to try to preserve free will, given what we know about how time works, is ridiculous. And why do we want to preserve free will? Sorry, it goes right into time for me. Why do we want to preserve will in time or free will? Because we want it to be that we are separate. We want it to be that we have control. And we want to tell the story that by being separate and by being in control, we deserve the punishments or the bad things that have happened, the sort of punishment by not making the right choices. And that those who have succeeded deserve their success because they made the right choice. I mean, it's all a story about autonomy. But if you look at the physics of the situation, but more the biology of the situation, the culture of the situation, it's just not true.
But yes, that's the meritocracy argument. But isn't there a point that if we act with coercion, we will get some stuff done, but not much? If we act with empowerment, then we will evoke the free will and the voluntary action, and the results will be better.
But the
Or
key
am I
question
completely wrong?
is, no, I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't think that I know. I'm just vociferous, and I also
right.
hold on to my ideas very loosely. So in 5 seconds, I
Yeah.
could change my mind. But my feeling is the question is that we put the emphasis on free will, but we need to put the emphasis on the we. Who are we talking about? The reason why free will has become such a thing is we're talking about, does a person have free will?
Right.
Well, no, of course not.
Oh,
Does that? No, of course not. Like scientifically, we know that everything that you're deciding right now has already been decided for you, like about half a second before. So, like, no, you don't have free will. But
but
does your conscious mind plus your unconscious mind plus what you ate for breakfast this morning plus the coffee you had plus the friend that you talked to plus the entire universe have free will? Yeah. So it's the we. Who do we think we are? If we think we are separate beings that aren't influenced by our environment and could do whatever we want, we're wrong. Just wrong. But if you're asking, does the universe have free will? Yes. So the
okay,
question is,
there.
who
Yeah,
are
yeah.
you? Who
Yeah.
are you? Who is
Okay,
the
I'm
company?
at the other end of this. I would argue that even a little piece of rock has free will. It just doesn't have much brain power to think it and has no ability to move any limbs or anything to show that it has free will. But there's no philosophical reason why it doesn't have free will to the extent it has moving parts. And then I'm thinking human beings have more of it, and others, like that free will exists universally,
I
also
think
in the
there
small.
is free will in the universe, but it's the
Yeah,
universe's free will.
right.
So like my free will and your free will are both subject to the universe's free will, which we take a part of. So we're part of the universe. It's not like we're not part of the universe. So it's not like our free will doesn't matter. It's just that it's not the whole story. So I think people get obsessed with free will used as a separation. And that's what I'm saying, this separation between employee and the structure. It's like the employee is the structure. The people in the company are the structure.
That I agree with, that when we create boundaries and territories, it is not because reality would be like that, but I do think it is because humans can't handle it otherwise, unless we sort of create
Change.
chunks. we make chunks that we can deal with. So that's why I would not be against when people say they have free will individually. Sure, on a deeper level, they know that they are dependent on everybody else and others may be dependent on them. But I think it's inspirational and motivational, and I think it can make us more loving human beings if we know that our actions have consequences.
We have
Oh, yeah, that's for
we
sure.
have agency.
We have agency. Thank you. That's your actions have consequences. We have agency.
Yeah.
That's not the same as free will. Yeah.
Isn't it?
No.
Why isn't it the
we
same?
do things. We all have to admit that people do things. That's agency. Yeah. People do things.
This is the second, last week I was hiking up in the mountains of northern New Mexico with Jason Fried from Basecamp and Neil Sales Griffin from Techstars. And we spent a day on this conversation. This is the second time in a week that I've had this conversation. I'm kind of more leaning on Martin's side in the sense of, we'll call it agency. Yes, we are all, programmed from all the different inputs that we have had over the course of our entire lifetime, and we're sort of pre-wired to make certain types of decisions and values. But I still come down on the camp of if not free will, agency. At the end of the day, I like to at least cling to the belief that I have choice.
Yeah, we all have choice. Yeah. See, these are good to distinguish.
Even if it
choice,
is a lie. Now I'm interrupting you again, Julia. But even if it is a lie that we have free will, it's one of the most beautiful lies there are.
Right,
like,
of course.
That's why I will hold on to it, even if you prove to me that I have no free will.
I will say, we need it. We need it. It's just that when we use it to separate, which I think the concept is used to separate a lot, we forget the interdependencies that really drive us.
And Martin, you mentioned coercion, and I think this is really nice to, at least even if it's an illusion, that choice matters, because I mean, there's all sorts of studies. My favorite is they would surveil people and then see what it did to their intrinsic motivation. So like, would you sit and like start working on a puzzle or look at magazines or something, or do you just sit and try not to get in trouble? And they found that if you tell people that the purpose of the surveillance is scientific curiosity or something that's very, us focused, rather than us versus them focused, like we're all us. If you say we're here to surveil you and make sure you don't do anything bad, well, that's bad culture, and it basically kills people's intrinsic motivation. So I think that if you can make the culture about, I can give you an example. So we had a core value at one of the past organizations that I went with, is that we have fun in everything we do. Okay, we have fun in everything we do. And also we used a project management system that was not fun at all. So in order to do anything, you had to go through this project. So unless the culture is baked into the processes, it's not real in a way. So I'm really interested in concrete ways that you make those cultural abstractions real in the organization.
Well, yeah, that's a really important. So let me ask you a question. Is bureaucracy good or bad? It's one of my favorite questions. I ask my class this, and most people say, well, bureaucracy is awful. And I say, well, bureaucracy is really institutionalized wisdom, in that organizations get started, they try something and it worked. They go, oh, let's make a rule. Let's do more of this. They try something else and it doesn't work. Oh, here's another rule. We're not going to do that. Don't do that. And over the course of time, you get all these rules and bureaucracy. What changes in the organization are the type of people at the beginning of organizations, innovators. They don't want to be told what to do, right? They just want to like poke holes, ask questions, break things. Whereas most people really like rules and bureaucracy and structure and told what to do. Right? So there's also human nature that's a part of this.
How do you, so do those people just leave and start their own startup, or is there a way that you're able to preserve an environment that caters to both groups, like the glue that holds everything together, and then the grease that like makes everything else slide?
I'll let Martin answer. I could see that glint in your eye on that one.
I agree, Mark, with you that bureaucracy is very much needed, and it provides structure, and it avoids pitfalls, and in government bureaucracy make sure everybody's treated equally, that nobody gets an unfair advantage. So many good reasons with it. As one who is perhaps not a driver of bureaucracy in my day-to-day job, although I perhaps should be, I feel that when you have good sensibilities, you need it less.
Yeah.
Like if you know what the risks are and you know the effects of what you're doing, then you're thinking, okay, I don't need the bureaucracy because I can figure out whether this is dangerous or not. And then it's irritating to you because it prevents you from moving fast. And you would like to tell the world that, okay, I can move faster because I'm aware of the risks. But those who are not aware of the risks, they should follow the bureaucracy. And neither of them is completely true, but I think we have to live in a world where we adapt a little bit. So those who don't like bureaucracy get used to it a little bit, and those who love bureaucracy realize that every rule will have exceptions, and not having exceptions is death. Like there will always be exceptions. So I do think you can find not a balance, but a functioning world where the same group or the same organization applies both bureaucracy and lack of bureaucracy, sort of in the same stuff they do.
How do you get the anti-bureaucracy people to make that compromise if one of their defining traits is that they don't compromise?
I'm not sure their defining trait is not to compromise. I think their defining trait is to get stuff done quickly. Like I can be so productive. Don't hold me back with rules because I can be so productive. But if they can see the universe and realize that other people do need the rules, and also see that when you are very productive, you create stuff that creates bureaucracy. So you created bureaucracy by being who you are. And I think when you realize that there's this, it's an inevitable side effect, then you can, even those who are against bureaucracy can live with it, and they can ask for help.
Yes. And this is where, but let's bring us back to unconditional love. So what is the penalty? What's the risk of making a bad decision, or, breaking a rule, or like there are some organizations, if there's unconditional love, Julia, going back to your original position, it's a safer environment to take the initiative.
Well, love isn't going to be withdrawn if you make a mistake. In fact, there's an expectation that everyone makes mistakes and that's part of the work, right? So love isn't going to be withdrawn. And it's not safer in the sense that, someone could still be like, wow, that was a really bad mistake, and now we're going to have to fire you because like it was really bad. And also you broke the law or whatever it is. I mean, there might be some drastic mistakes, but the love isn't going to be withdrawn if it's done right. And so that handling of that mistake is different than in an environment without the unconditional love, really drastic mistakes. But I kind of secretly want to hear from Amber, because you're working at a large organization that I don't think you could name, but I'm sure it has a lot of bureaucracy. And at the same time, I'm sure that people have noticed that you're a person that kind of goes around that or something. Like someone must have noticed by now that you're an innovator, and I'm curious how they have handled that. I don't know if you're open to talking about that, but I think it's like a perfect case study.
So what I'm experiencing at work now is people scrambling to find ways to like use me. And they're just like, well, I can ask this person if they could put you here, if I could put you there. It just seems to be like a bunch of confusion around like, where do I go to like have a long-term project where I can do the thing that I do. And so at this point, it is just like a lot of busy work, but nothing that's allowing me to like use the most of my skills. So I mean, I appreciate the effort to try to put it somewhere, and there is the like them noticing like, okay, you have a mind that's more like design like or strategic, and we need to be accessing that in other ways. And so I appreciate that. That feels loving to me to even be seen in such a ways. So I think with it being a large organization, I think across the board, I can't say that it isn't this like cold stoic place that's like devoid of like love, but there are all these little systems that operate within it. And like I've found like moments where there are just people who do know how to love each other. And so like I think when it's this big, like Fortune 100 beast and it's like millions and or hundreds of thousands of employees, it's, you know, you focus in on the pockets of love that you can find.
And
So
Amber, when let's say you've got a performance evaluation or something, I don't know what it looks like at your organization. Often there's the question of KPIs, your key performance indicators, or OKRs, or like whatever people look at. As somebody uh, who gets tapped for projects that need less tangible, harder to quantify thinking, how do you end up being evaluated? Is it more informal, or like how do you get cloned throughout the organization in a way that recognizes your value to the organization?
I keep a running list of like everything I ever do. And before we do a performance review, I put that in with my self-assessment. Like this is everything I've done in the past 6 months. And then you can tell me how valuable that is to the organization. And so that's where we are right now. Yeah. So, did that answer the question? Kind of. Oh.
Amber, it strikes me that that approach is like you showing them how to do unconditional love. Like, like you're not saying like, hey, was this good? Or I'm looking for pats on the back. You're saying like, hey, this is what I did. So this is the reality of the situation. You tell me, like, was this, I mean, I don't know. Was this valuable?
I agree, and I think that kind of like plays into the idea that you have to kind of that it is this big monster that could be like devoid of that. Like people oftentimes say there is no love in corporate spaces and no love in like the corporate area when there can be. And so like I mean I have to bring it with me, so to speak, and like part of loving myself is keeping that list of things. And so it is, yeah, it is just this, it is a show of like, this is how you can love me, or yeah. But I
Do you
hope that
think,
also
Amber,
doesn't make it very transactional. And so I'm trying to, yeah.
if I could ask you, Amber, I don't know your work, but do you think it's different, this conversation, this topic of unconditional love and acceptance? Is it different in very large organizations compared to smaller ones, or is
Yeah,
it just people?
it doesn't happen. Just nobody's talking about that. I
Yeah.
think people are it's like a city. People want to hustle and bustle. You know, you want to get to the train as fast as you can. So people are oftentimes trying to get the message across as fast as they can. Like you have little moments where you build rapport, but even that's like very quick, you know. And so you don't spend time like doing an icebreaker at the start of a meeting or checking in. Like we don't get to know each other in those ways, but in small organizations, it's very easy to do that. I would say it's less embarrassing. I don't feel embarrassed by those kinds of things, but I think people aren't ready, aren't prepared to have someone ask them an obscure question about how they feel or what they think as a way to get to know them in a way that isn't like, what kind of work can you do? So
Amber, you're checking questions and checkout questions. Whatever you would do them would be like so amazing. Like, what kind of bird do you feel like today? Like, that's awesome. And you learned so much about people.
So yeah, I love those questions. Just having us think about like, how did my day feel and what does that shape look like? So yeah.
But part of it is on you, but part of it, a good part of it is on your boss as well. A great leader is somebody who's totally invested in the success of the people who are working with them. And a great manager is somebody who has a detailed conversation with their employee about what are their career aspirations? Where do they want to go? What kind of skills and experiences do you need to be able to get you to the next rung of your journey, wherever that may be? And wonderful managers are the ones who have your back, who are completely invested in your success. And so part of it's on you to be able to articulate what you're doing, and part of it is on your manager to be an advocate for you and to clearly explain what it is that you need to do for you to progress, however you define progressing.
That's a piece of
Yep.
love, is the co-creation of love between, right?
Yeah.
It can't just be all on Amber or on Mark or on Julia or any of us. There's this co-creation of that loving connection. So Amber's learning how to create that in little bubbles in a big space, sounds
Yeah,
like.
you can
Is that
teach.
right, Amber?
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
And when we talk about scale, and I guess this question is probably for Mark, since you're a specialist in, exits and so on. The book is Exit Right, I
Exit
believe.
right. Yeah.
Exit Right.
Mhm.
So we know some things from like evolutionary biology, like Dunbar's number. So after, 100 people, then it's harder to have empathy to the extent that you would have, and normative social pressure, and it becomes replaced by laws and so on. So what I'm really curious about, let's say you build an organization that is 100 people big, and it's got a very strong culture of love. You sell that organization and it scales to 1,000 people. How do you preserve that culture as it scales?
Well, if you're the one being bought, sorry, it's the company that's purchasing yours. They are the dominant culture. Now
Yeah.
you could have little you could preserve little pockets of your culture, but oftentimes what most people don't realize that many exits fail post-transaction. And the reason it failed for many reasons, but one of the primary reasons is culture, is that companies have really different styles of culture. And when you say culture, what does that mean? It means decision making. How do decisions get made? It's like values, integrity, um, and in fact, we don't talk about integrity nearly enough in the business context, but that's a whole nother conversation. And so it's when you sell your company, you basically, for the most part, have lost control of the culture. I mean, sometimes it depends on the size of the two entities. You can be an influencer, but it's the larger company's culture that dominates.
And what if you scale it and you don't sell? You scale it all internally.
Yeah, no, look, I I have been part of large publicly traded companies. The one of the best cultures I've ever seen. I was at Redbox, the movie kiosks, in front of the grocery stores. I was the head of innovation and the chief marketing officer for Redbox. And the CEO, a guy named Greg Kaplan, was 10 years my junior. I learned so much from Greg about culture, about unconditional love, about holding people accountable, loving them, but holding them accountable for results, and openness and transparency. And that was a multiple thousand person company. And like you could do it. It's harder. The larger the entity, it's harder. But if the CEO leads by example and clearly articulates their values and lives those values, it's certainly possible. I'll give you one quick story about that. When we were getting big, we were buying at one point $1 billion worth of movies every year, and that had caught Hollywood's attention, and they started giving the buyers lots of perks. And so we created a rule, and the rule was, we limited gifts to $100. The very next day, the CEO, we were a big customer of Verizon, and Verizon, the CEO's from New York. He loves the Giants. The Giants were in the Super Bowl that year, and Verizon calls him up and said, "Hey, would you like to be our guest? All expenses paid. We're going to go to the Super Bowl." And he's like, "Yeah, Super Bowl, Giants." Oh, we just made a rule, and he turned it down. And so what was good, like, that's how you lead by example.
That's a great story. And I'm curious, Marten, amongst hackers, what is integrity, transparency, empathy? What does that look like? Because I imagine that population is a bit more mischievous than most.
Depends on what you mean by mischievous, because I have found that ethical hackers are the most noble, ideal, pure, and with good intent than most others. Because if you don't think like that, then there are other pursuits you can do. You can become a criminal. So if you don't, then it sort of leaves a purer population. So with ethical hackers, and we have 2 million of them in the community, we find like they're like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. They are trying to do a good deed every day. They hang out together. They sing songs together. We give them badges. Like it's really a movement where you're trying to make the world a better place. But but having said this, I don't think any community, whether it's employees or volunteers, that I think all of them need stewardship, and you must feed the behaviors you want to see more of, and you must take counteraction against behaviors you want to see less of, because no group can self-evolve fully. You need stewardship. So HackerOne, when we have these 2 million ethical hackers, we set rules. Like we encourage them, we love them, we send them T-shirts and swag, less than $100 of value, but we send them a lot of stuff and we try to lift them up. But we also have rules saying this you cannot do. If you do this, we will deduct points from your account. We will not invite you to the following place. So you have to have rules for the behavior, and you have to stimulate and inspire the behavior you want to see more of. When we want to see them collaborate and learn from each other and share experiences with each other, when that happens, we make it known. We make a YouTube video of it, we write a blog about it, we give them special badges or awards. So over a long time, many years, you build a culture where they start assuming that that's the rule. Oh, if I'm an ethical hacker, I need to be collaborative, I need to be honest, I need to talk, I need to do this, I mustn't swear. Like they learn these things, and they start thinking that's how it always was. It wasn't really like that. It was an intentional design that we are driving in I think, a very compassionate but still firm way. And then at some point, you see the value and you just act like that. And if you don't like it, then you don't become an ethical hacker. You go somewhere else.
See, I think that's so consistent with unconditional love. If you do it with love, if in other words, if you're fine with them not being an ethical hacker or breaking the rules, but there's a consequence, but you're not withdrawing love, that's totally not a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a saying at HackerOne, we say, hackers gonna hack. Like sometimes we are upset that they did some trick to us. And then there's always somebody who says, no, hackers gonna hack. Like now you need to love them because they figured out how to circumvent your rule. Like
Yeah, they're
when they
teaching
learn,
you. They're
yeah, they're
teaching you.
teaching us. They are actually, we should be grateful for them doing it. Of course, HackerOne is in the business of delivering vulnerabilities to people. So our whole existence is about telling companies what's wrong with them. So it's sort of, we must know how to deal with that. But I love that part of the business because it's a large scale experiment in what happens when you have people from all walks of life, all cultures, all nations, all races, all religions, all genders, all everything. And yet there are clear like consistencies and similarities that you see across everybody. That's empowering. Like it doesn't feel as divided as the world looks like when you open a newspaper.
I couldn't agree more. That's so beautifully said.
All right. Is there anything anybody else really wants to talk about before we end up today?
Well, Eric, you were really smart and thoughtful. Sorry, Amber, were you about to say something?
I did have some ethical hacking questions.
Let's do that, and then I'll ask Eric that question.
And so I wasn't like super prepped on the fact that there would be some ethical hacking here. I don't recall, so it was my apologies. So when it comes ethical hacking is like a huge topic amongst people who are anti-racist, especially like in online spaces and well mostly online spaces, but I'm curious a couple things just like, do you know of any success stories that involve like where ethical hacking maybe like effectively reduced or like mitigated some type of racism within a company or online? Or like, how do you see ethical hacking being used to help in like those type of ways in the future?
It's a very good question, and we are very active with that. We try to engage with groups that further those thoughts. There are certain benefits and certain drawbacks. One is that in a digital realm, people can be harsher against each other and say more stupid stuff that's hurtful. So we really have to guard against that, because people without even meaning ill will say really ugly things, and we punish them, like we take away points or we ban them for a time to show them that we do hold them to a standard. But on the other hand, when you do ethical hacking, your work is digital and nobody can see who you are. So I would never say that we need to hide who we are, but it's possible as an ethical hacker to not declare what race you are, what gender you are, what age you are, and from your hacker name, people won't know. So it gives an opportunity for people to sort of act out the ethical hacking independent of whatever people might say, and that can give them more confidence, can give them success, can give them many things without immediately being sort of tied or labeled to a particular group. But like I said, I don't think our world should be such that we don't have to hide who we are. But given that it's digital, there are certain benefits there. And then at HackerOne, we just try to reinforce these rules over and over again. Like we have in the company, we have values that speak to this. One value is respect all people. And we believe that the ethical hackers, they come from anywhere. And there's no, it doesn't help to come from a fine family. It doesn't help to come from a fine country. Like the ethical hacking is about people with a lot of curiosity and enough mathematical skill to figure out computers. But what they have more than anybody else is curiosity. So therefore we have a very varied bunch, and we're trying to show that to everybody and show that there's no predictor of success other than your own curiosity. That's why I believe in free will, Julia, because I see it playing out here. And I think we get beautiful stories there of like the colorfulness of the community, the diversity, and all of that. But we have to be very clear that people must not use bad language about each other or towards each other. So we check that, and we have banned some ethical hackers who were amazing technically, but who didn't treat other people well. And we said, sorry, then you can't play in our league here, because we are not only do you need to be a really good hacker, you also need to respect our rules and respect your fellow hackers. So I'm not sure that answered your question, Amber, but that's how we operate this.
Well, I mean, that helped me to learn a lot about HackerOne. I will say, like, I understand like the anonymity piece, and I like agree with it. I like also appreciate that. I feel like that's why Time Machine is anonymous. So yeah. So, I did have another question. The same thing regarding like ethical hacking and fighting racism in digital spaces. Like, are there any like legal frameworks that may support an ethical hacker when trying to fight racism, or are there some that are gonna be more against them for doing things for like especially in the realm of racism? So
Amber, do you mean like if like an ethical hacker explicitly decides I'm going to break into this company and kind of show that they're racist?
yes, things
Yeah.
like that on a like much larger scale, or you like find a website that is or a forum that is like for racism, but you hack into this and now you know who all these users are and things like that. So
Oh yes, now I understand. So we are not there, meaning our work is about finding system vulnerabilities, not political or moral or other bias. So we don't hack into those things. And we have decided, HackerOne, that we always are on the good side. Like we are the doctor, not the judge. So we will always try to make software more secure, but we are not trying to make a political statement. We are not trying to chase criminals or violators of anything. We are a preventative service, and we make sure there's better health in the digital world. But it's for others then to take action if there's somebody violating a rule or something. So, and we never do malicious hacking against anybody. We don't think our customers could trust us if we had sort of both sides in our business. But this becomes very philosophical and nuanced when you go into the details, because there's a lot of big questions we have to answer when we decide who we work with and what kind of customers we accept and what we demand from our customers, which we also have demands on. So that's a whole long discussion on its own. Probably shouldn't go into it today, but happy to cover it offline.
Right on. We'll continue this for sure because it's something I'm interested in as well, Martin. But we're at the top of the hour. I think today we, further demonstrated that within a container of love, we can have people with very different fundamental metaphysical and political and economic beliefs come together and have like a civil conversation, which is really refreshing these days. So Mark, Martin, Julia, Amber, I love that you were all on, and best of luck.
All right. Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
us.
Thank you. It
Thanks,
was
Eric.
fun.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Mark.